What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie Gladiator 2. Here's a quick synopsis. Lucius Aurelius, grandson of former Emperor of Rome, Marcus Aurelius, has left behind his life in Rome and changed his name until the Roman Empire attacks his home, forcing him to return and fight in the Colosseum as a gladiator. The film stars Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, Connie Britton, Joseph Quinn, and Fred Hechinger. Standout performances. The biggest, and I mean the biggest reason I was hyped for Gladiator 2 was to see Paul Mescal lead a giant blockbuster film, because it intrigued me that this guy who made a name for himself acting through emotions in the series Normal People and the movies After Sun and All of Us Strangers, I wanted to see if he would bring that to a studio movie or adapt to it, and what ended up happening is he did both. There are moments where he's able to convey powerful emotions and is able to be a viable action star as Lucius Aurelius. I'm very high on his performance, and reading the critics of Gladiator 2, there's a real divide about his acting in the movie given by Mescal. And my issue is the knock against him seems to have absolutely nothing to do with him and everything to do with comparing him to Russell Crowe's Maximus from Gladiator. And I thought we were all in agreement that we did not want a carbon copy of a character. I wanted Mescal to do his own thing, and he did, and some are mad about it. We saw this exact same kind of critique earlier this year with Anya Taylor-Joy in Furiosa. People couldn't help but say she wasn't as good as Theron, and for me, that's not the point. The point is to let these young stars put their stamp on these iconic franchises, and they did just that. At the end of the day, it's also unfair to, in the moment, compare a performance like Crowe in Gladiator, a movie with a rich history that won the actor an Oscar. Yes, on paper, it's easy to compare Mescal and Crowe. Both were coming off of Oscar-nominated performances before appearing in a Gladiator movie, but Russell Crowe had more experience in these bigger type of movies, like The Quick and the Dead and LA Confidential and The Insider. This was Mescal's first studio film, his first test, and for me anyways, he passed with flying colors. He was a very believable gladiator and brought real gravitas to the role. The other thing I don't think people are taking into account is how hard it is to lead these kinds of sword and sandals epics. Yes, there are modern success stories, well-regarded performances from Crowe in Gladiator and Mel Gibson in Braveheart, and many also loved Alexander Skarsgård in The Northman and Viola Davis in The Woman King. There are also ones that are not beloved. Brad Pitt in Troy, which I like, Crowe himself in Robin Hood, Timothée Chalamet in The King, Chris Pine in Outlaw King, and some that are deemed bad. Colin Farrell in Alexander, Clive Owen in King Arthur, Orlando Bloom in Kingdom of Heaven, Charlie Hunnam in King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, which I will defend, it's good. I hope over time people will be kind to Mescal in Gladiator 2. The hero is never the flashy roles in these movies, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are giving a bad performance. In the future, it will be interesting to see if Mescal continues to make high-scale movies. For now, he's returning to smaller films, as next year he has two films: Hamnet, directed by Chloe Zhao, co-starring Jessie Buckley, and Masters of Sound with Josh O'Connor. It's never a surprise when Denzel Washington gives a great performance. That's all he does. What is surprising is him taking a supporting role. Washington is one of the best leading men of all time and really hasn't had a supporting role since 1993 with Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing and Jonathan Demme's Philadelphia, though some may argue he's co-lead with Tom Hanks. He, of course, won Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars for 1989's Glory and was nominated for 1987's Cry Freedom. Gladiator 2 sees the two-time Oscar winner play Macrinus, a man who is assembling a group of gladiators and secretly looking to gain power in Rome. Yes, I think it could be described as a showy performance, but it's more nuanced than that. I love the scenes and the dynamic between Mescal and Washington. These are the kind of movies I love, seeing young and up-and-coming movie stars. While I don't agree with the majority of opinion about Paul Mescal's performance, I do agree that Denzel Washington deserves deserves high praise for his performance in Gladiator 2. The first Gladiator is known for the hero tale of Maximus, and also for the villain story of Commodus, played by Joaquin Phoenix, the tyrant ruler of Rome. And Gladiator 2 has not one, but two evil emperor brothers, Geta and Carcalla, played by Joseph Quinn and Fred Hechinger, respectively. They are fun, sinister characters who are unfit to rule. And that is an archetype you see in a lot of Ridley Scott movies. Commodus and Gladiator, Prince John, played by Oscar Isaac in Robin Hood, Alex Lothar as King Charles IV in The Last Duel. He even had this type of character as the lead of one of his movies with Joaquin Phoenix in Napoleon. I think it's fair to say that Ridley Scott is more interested in these kind of unfit kings than he is in telling a hero's journey type of movie, and I think you feel that in Gladiator 2. He's way more interested in the power dynamics of Rome than telling you the tale of Lucius Aurelius. Let's talk more about Sir Ridley Scott. This return to Gladiator feels similar to his return to the Alien movies, but the difference is people are upset for the opposite reason. In Prometheus and Revenant, he was questioned for making movies that were too different from his original film, and for Gladiator 2, he is accused of making the exact same film as Gladiator, which I disagree with. This film follows the same formula of the original, but changes key elements of the story, which is better than most sequels, and it's what Twisters did this year. It's what Beetlejuice did this year, and it's even what Top Gun Maverick did. It played the hits with some changes, which is what the studio wanted. Do I think Paramount would have made Gladiator 2 if it didn't have a strong connection to the first film? Absolutely no way. This movie was made to be a hit film. Evaluating the movie Gladiator 2, here's where I stand. I really like the movie. It's a movie with an epic scale, and it's impressive to see what Scott is still capable of. I put it just a smidge behind the original Gladiator movie. It has wild action sequences with animals. It's going to be unlike anything you see in a movie theater this year. When I hear people's thoughts on this movie, I just think to myself, I think we're way too harsh on sequels. Yes, we all have this idea that sequels are just retreads, that they're cash grabs, that the only reason that these movies were made were to make a boatload of money. And that is true. They made Gladiator 2 to make money, but I do believe that Ridley Scott has real passion for Gladiator 2. Like, you can see it in the movie. This is a guy who cared about the movie that he was making. You can see that in the filmmaking. In bad sequels, you don't get a performance like the one given by Denzel Washington or Paul Mescal. And is it just me? I do find the outpouring of support of Russell Crowe to be just so weird. Like, yes, he's all-time good as Maximus. I love the earlier films of Russell Crowe, but these are coming from the same people who have kind of banished Russell Crowe from being a movie star in the first place. I mean, when was the last time real movie critics got excited for a Russell Crowe performance, and then all of a sudden Gladiator 2 comes out, and the big take is we're really missing the presence of Russell Crowe. Well, Russell Crowe was recently in a great film called The Nice Guys that no one appreciated, that hasn't been seen by that many people, and he didn't get accolades for that performance. But here comes Gladiator 2, and you want me to miss Russell Crowe. I agree with the take that Mescal is not as good as Russell Crowe. I just don't agree with the take that he's miscast or he's not good in the movie. He is very good in the movie. Russell Crowe has all the hype of winning an Oscar and all of the legacy cementing him as a movie star. That's what Gladiator did for him. Paul Mescal, who knows what Gladiator 2 is going to do for his career. I knew there were going to be a lot of comparisons between Mescal and Russell Crowe because that movie did make Crowe a giant movie star. I just didn't think that there would be this strong of a reaction to the missing of Maximus or the idea that Mescal is just trying to be Maximus. Like, I didn't get that feeling whatsoever. I guess more people love the Russell Crowe performance in Gladiator than I thought, because I thought people had kind of changed their minds about that performance. Like, maybe it's not one of the best performances of all time. I don't think it is. I think Russell Crowe is great in Gladiator, and I don't think Mescal is that far behind in Gladiator 2. Box office. So far as I'm recording this, Gladiator 2 has made over $220 million. The first Gladiator made just under $500 million, and I would not be surprised if this one ends up making more money. I'm also interested to see if Gladiator 2 makes more money overall than Wicked, despite Wicked making more money at the domestic box office. The Gladiator legacy may end up being the film's trump card. The other newsworthy thing to talk about is after Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott is now the 10th highest grossing director all time at the box office. Oscar chances. The first Gladiator was a Best Picture winning film. Russell Crowe won Best Actor. Joaquin Phoenix was nominated as well. I think the one guaranteed Oscar nomination to come from Gladiator 2 is Denzel Washington. And at this point, I feel very strongly that Denzel Washington is going to get his third Oscar trophy. I think he's going to win the award. I think the Academy has become obsessed with giving Oscars to the villain performance. You can go back to Heath Ledger winning for playing Joker. I just think that they become enamored with that villain performance because it's the showier performance, and clearly the Oscars love it when an actor puts on a show. Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men. Denzel himself has already won an Oscar for playing a bad guy in Training Day. Christoph Waltz for Inglourious Bastards. I mean, the Academy loves villain performances, and I think that streak is going to continue. I predict Denzel Washington will win Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars, even though he might not be the best villain performance of 2024. I mean, I think he's in the running. I would go between Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2, Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa, or Austin Butler in Dune Part 2. If any of those three men end up taking home an Oscar trophy, I'm going to be happy. I would be pleasantly surprised to see Sir Ridley Scott get an Oscar nomination for Best Director. It's insane that he hasn't been nominated for that award since 2002 with Black Hawk Down. I mean, how did we not give this man a nomination for American Gangster, The Martian, and The Last Duel? Those are three movies I believed he deserved directing nominations for. I mean, he is still at the top of his game. House of Gucci is really good as well. I wouldn't have given him a nomination for that movie, but I think he should have been in the discussion. I mean, what he does in Gladiator 2 is something that very few directors are capable of doing, making these kind of really good-looking, epic movies on a grand scale. I mean, how many people are capable of doing that? I mean, in the hands of so many others, Gladiator 2 would be CGI garbage, but in the hands of Ridley Scott, it looks like one of the best-looking films of 2024. I'm also hearing people say that if Ridley Scott wins for Best Director for Gladiator 2, it would be similar to when Martin Scorsese won for Best Director for The Departed. I would like to say this right now. The Departed is a great movie. I mean, it is one of my favorite Scorsese movies. Leonardo DiCaprio is brilliant in it. Matt Damon, Jack Nicholson. I do not believe that Gladiator 2 is on par with The Departed, but I would not be mad if Ridley Scott won Best Director for Gladiator 2. I mean, he is one of the best directors of all time. He should end up his career winning at least one Best Director, but there are many great all-time directors who have not won the award, Stanley Kubrick among them. I do have a feeling that Gladiator 2 is going to end up getting a Best Picture nomination, only because I think of the 10 movies, there are not enough hits that are going to get nominated for Best Picture, and Gladiator 2 is going to be one of the bigger hits of the year, and I think the Academy wants to start recognizing these bigger movies, especially one that's impressive like Gladiator 2. I actually think you can make a case that Gladiator 2 could end up being one of the 10 best movies of the year. Will it make my list of the 10 best movies of the year? I don't know, but I can see how you could get there. How you feel about Gladiator 2 is all going to come down to expectations, and my expectations for this movie were met. I wanted to see if Paul Mescal could leave a giant blockbuster. He proved that he could. I wanted to see Denzel Washington absolutely go for it. He did that. And I wanted Sir Ridley Scott to go full Sir Ridley Scott, and he absolutely did that. I mean, I wasn't expecting to go see Gladiator 2 and walk out and go, this is the best movie of all time, because I don't don't think that the first Gladiator is in that conversation. If you believe that Gladiator is one of the best movies of all time, then I could see you being underwhelmed by Gladiator 2, but it's not in my pantheon of all-time great movies. It wouldn't make my top 25, maybe even my top 50 movies. I think it's a great film. I think Gladiator 2 is really close to being a great film. I guess I didn't know that there were so many people out there so passionate about the first Gladiator film, so passionate about the Russell Crowe performance. So again, as I've been saying, the big criticism has been, oh, Gladiator 2 is just like the first Gladiator. Well, you seem like you would all be okay with that if Paul Mescal was just exactly as good as Russell Crowe, and I think that's wrong. I think that's insane. So you did just want the exact same movie if they could have pulled it off the exact same way. I mean, it kind of makes no sense. It's like admitting that you didn't want them to do anything new, which is not what they did. I think Gladiator 2 does stand against Gladiator. I think it is its own movie. It just follows the structure and the formula of the first film, but then changes things up, which is what most halfway decent sequels do. The movie has played out the way I wanted, but the reaction to it has not. Like, I wanted this to be a movie where we all walked away and we went, oh wow, this Paul Mescal guy has it. And I think he has it, and I still think he has it. I think he is very good in Gladiator 2, and I still believe in him being a big future movie star. I want him to do the kind of movies he wants to do, but I also want to see him work with really good filmmakers making big movies. Like in the future, I want to see Paul Mescal work with Sir Ridley Scott again. I want to see him work with Denis Villeneuve. I want to see him in a Christopher Nolan movie. And I just don't agree with this narrative that he got so outacted by Denzel Washington that it's embarrassing. I mean, he acted with one of the all-time greats, and I think he stood his own. I think he was formidable in those scenes. I think he was very, very good acting alongside Denzel Washington. And I hope in the years to come, we think of it the same way we think about Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. I mean, when that movie came out, it was, oh, Jack Nicholson's just destroying Tom Cruise. And now we can look back at it and go, well, Tom Cruise is actually really good in A Few Good Men as well. Did I go into this movie hoping that Mescal would get an Oscar nomination for Gladiator 2 the same way that Crowe got one for Gladiator? Absolutely. That's not going to happen, and nor do I believe that it should happen. I don't believe he gives an Oscar-worthy performance, but it is a very good performance, and a misunderstood one. Like, I think he is doing exactly what the movie is asking him to do, the same way that Anya Taylor-Joy was doing exactly what Furiosa was asking of her. Yes, you watch those movies and you go, oh wow, Mescal gets outacted by Denzel. Oh, Anya Taylor-Joy gets outacted by Chris Hemsworth. Those two are just given the showier roles. It's harder to be the stoic lead of these kind of giant blockbusters. I believe over time, more appreciation will grow over those two performances. It's almost how it exactly played out with Twisters. I mean, everyone was praising Glenn Powell and not talking about Daisy Edgar-Jones because she had to play the heart and soul of the movie the way Mescal has to for Gladiator 2. I mean, emotionally, Gladiator 2 cares about no other character other than Lucius. So he has to bring all of the emotion while every other actor gets to play the comedic elements, gets to play the sinister elements, gets to play the fun elements, while Mescal only gets a few fun scenes. If you walk out of Furiosa and Gladiator 2 and don't believe that Anya Taylor-Joy can be an action star, and don't believe that Paul Mescal can be an action star, then I just believe you are flat out wrong. And when it comes to Daisy Edgar-Jones and Twisters, I believe she was one of the best things about that movie, the same way that I believe Mescal is one of the best things about Gladiator 2. These two actors from Normal People are two of the best young actors working today, and I hope they get to make one of these big blockbuster films together. Russell Crowe once famously asked the crowd in the original Gladiator, "Are you not entertained?" And when it comes to Gladiator 2, I was beyond entertained. And that is the point of this movie, to be a crowd pleaser. And Gladiator 2 is a crowd pleaser. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out Gladiator 2. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about John M. Chu's Wicked, starring Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. So tune into that and please rate, review, and subscribe.